Hi everyone, it's Livy Love from Budgie Love Cosplay, and I'm here to talk about how to do fishing line ruffles. These kind of things that I used on my Ursula costume. The tools you'll need is obviously fishing line. You'll need a higher test. We used 80-pound test. 80 pound to 100 would be good. You want to make sure that your fishing line is really thick. See, nice and thick, and not the skinny type, because the skinny type doesn't hold the curl very well versus this stuff that once you heat it up it'll hold the curl. And the last thing you will need, which is kind of optional but it'll make it a lot easier on you, is one of the feet to do a rolling hem. Let's see, can you see it? And that's what it's called sometimes. I don't know, is that called picot? I don't know. That's how it's spelled. And that's what it looks like. And then you'll also need your lightweight fabric, either like an organza or like a knit, like a sheer type fabric. You want to make sure it's lightweight and not too heavy, or else it's not gonna curl up. The first part of our tutorial is going to be prepping our fishing line. So to prep the fishing line to look like this, first you're going to take your normal fishing line from this spool and you're going to wrap it around a smaller, most likely wooden, something that can be heated up and boiled, because eventually you're going to put this in a pot of boiling water. So you want to make sure that it's not something like cheap plastic. So you're going to take whatever fishing line you got and make sure it's clear, and you're going to wrap it very carefully around the dowel. My husband created this little device that has a wooden dowel down the center and then these two ends to make sure that it doesn't unravel. It also has a little hole right here so that you can wrap the start of it, the start of your fishing line, to the top, and then slowly just wrap the fishing line around the dowel. The smaller the dowel, the tighter your curls are going to be. So if you want wider curls, then you should get a thicker wooden dowel. Once you've wrapped all your fishing line around this, you're then going to take your dowel and you're going to place it into the pot of boiling water. You'll leave it in there for about 15 minutes to an hour, depending on how much you have on there. You need to make sure that the plastic does not touch the pot and just sits in the water. That's why when he created this, you know, it has a little bit of feet so that it can actually sit in the pot and not have to worry about the plastic melting. And we soaked ours for an hour. After you've soaked your fishing line for however long you needed to, depending on the amount, you let it cool for an hour to overnight. Just make sure that it's very cool to the touch. You don't want it to be hot because then it will lose the shape. And then after that, you can start getting ready to sew it. After you finish prepping your fishing line, you'll start working on your pattern. It'll be a half circle, similar to this, but obviously the size that you'll need it. And then after that, you'll start prepping your fabric. What I did was I took a piece of cardboard that was about the size of my fabric, like this ruler is to this, and I took some painter's tape and took my fabric and taped it along, and I have some pictures, and then slowly just wrapped all the yards of fabric around. Like this. You might have a little bit of extra. That's fine. Then I placed my pattern on top, pinned it, and make sure to pin all the way through all the fabrics. All the layers of the fabric. Then after that, I took the fabric and then held the cardboard and pulled it out and slid out the fabric. In doing this, you ended up having your fabric perfectly pinned, and then you could just cut out your circles, and then you had all your circles all cut out in a nice neat little pattern, and you were able to cut out about 5. I found it gave me trouble when I got close to 10 yards of sheer fabric. It really depended on the fabric. Like this fabric was about 5 yards, and then it gave me trouble, while this one, little sparkly stuff, it was about 10 yards I could do, and it didn't give me any trouble at all. Once you've cut out all your pieces, you'll end up with full circles. You're going to want to then cut, because you'll have a full circle instead of a half. You'll want to cut a line for each part of the circle for just one line. And then after you're done with that, you're going to want to take your scissors and round out the edges along the lines that you cut. Something similar to this. So while yours will be a full circle, your edges should look very similar to that. Nice and rounded. Because if you don't, then you'll have it like this at your ends. And if you're doing the circles like I was doing, that would look bad. So make sure to round out your edges unless you plan to do something like this. I can't see why, but maybe. But you'd want to have it more rounded so that your ends come out looking like this, so that you can start doing sew a straight line on your garment and have it, you know, looking like this. Or better yet, here's a full one. Like this. Now that all your circles are cut out, what you're going to do is then create the edge on your fabric. So what you do is you'll use this foot on your machine, and you will slowly feed your fabric, okay, let me see, through this little loop. You'll feed it in there. And also what you'll do, it's easier to show this way, is you'll then slide the fishing line through here, and you'll make sure that it goes through the edge, and your fabric will wrap around the fishing line, and then your stitch will be a zigzag stitch to go around it. Once you finish doing that, you'll end up with this. And it'll roll around and hold, and then you'll have, you know, little boingy ruffles like this. Sometimes you'll end up with like a little bit of fabric that just comes out, and you can just trim this back depending on your fabric. If it's the kind that frays, you might not want to do that, but I was able to do it on this organza and it didn't cause me any problems just trimming it back, or even leaving it as is. It's not that noticeable when you have a big old mass of ruffles. So that's all you have to do to create this, and then all you'll do at the very end when you're attaching it to your garment, instead of having to do a bunch of gathers or anything, you'll go along this, pin it to your fabric, and just sew a straight line. Depending on your fabric, you might want to do an edge on this, or you might want to just use some sort of fray check, which is what we did, is we put fray check on the edge. Obviously test out your fabrics first, but then you just sew it to the dress, or whatever dress you sew it this way. You can even sew it this way, because yeah, depending on the fabric, it might look nice either way. These little guys, I think they're really pretty. And that's how you make these ruffles. It's not hard, just a little time consuming, and takes a lot of fabric. So if you saw that skirt that was in the very intro, that took about 50 yards of fabric. So it's not cheap, and it's very time consuming, but gives a really cool effect. And that's all you have to do is just fishing line and fabric. So bye. Oh, and check out little Mew. Isn't he cute? Bye bye. Here's Jeff. Okay, he's gone.